Welcome back to another episode of Tuba People TV, where we talk about Arnold Jacobs all of the time. Puddles and I are here on the campus of Baylor University with Mark Schubert, longtime friend. Gosh, it's been about 20 years since we first met each other. Brevard Music Center in North Carolina. Mark, in addition to being a performing artist at the Brevard Music Center, is also a lecturer in trumpet here at Baylor University and the coordinator of brass chamber music. And was a longtime member of the trumpet section of the Honolulu Symphony. And prior to that, you were based in Boston. So Mark, it's great to see you.
Glad to be here.
And along the way, and when we were at Brevard 20 years ago, I remember you talking about you had a series of 6 lessons set up with Mr. Jacobs, and that somehow got reduced to a couple through his illness and that sort of thing. But off camera, we were talking about that very first lesson and how you were in the hallway at the Fine Arts Building, and you were listening to this person having the lesson. They were having quite a hard time starting notes, and he's going way over, pretty much into your lesson time. 30 minutes are going by, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and so finally you just decide, well, I'm going to knock on the door and make sure he knows I'm here. I'm wondering if you can fill in the rest. Take it from there.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt the lesson, but I decided maybe he'd forgotten I was there, so I knocked on the door, and the student opened the door, and he said, "Come on in." And I came in, and he said, "We're going to continue for just a few more minutes." And he had the student walking and starting notes. They had a metronome going. The student would take a few steps and play a note. He said, he indicated to me to get my horn out. I got my horn out and, come and play.
Play along.
So I ended up walking around the room to the metronome, and we would play a note on his signal. And he would change the length of our stride, short steps, long steps. It seemed like he was doing things to get a rhythm established so that there was momentum, but at the same time he was trying to keep his mind off of all the physical things that he was doing to try and start notes.
So there was a lot of walking. Well, not walking in place, really. You were actually
walking
walking around the studio.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So that went on for. I probably did that with him for maybe 10 minutes.
You remember the note?
He changed the notes.
Oh, he did change the notes.
Yeah, he did change the notes. He changed between 2 or 3, 4 notes. I can't remember. He would give us a signal when to play, and he was actually playing on his ring with us.
Okay.
He would put the ring in his pocket and put it back in his pocket. And put it back in his pocket.
Did that help the student?
During the time I was there and listening to the lesson from outside the door and to the time he finished, I think it was helping.
So there was a problem starting the notes on time. There was sort of a stutter effect of some sort.
Yeah, sometimes he couldn't start at all. Sometimes it would stutter. Sometimes it would start late. Rarely early.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely a definite hang-up.
After that student departed, was there any conversation as you were getting set up for your own lesson as to what was going on and what he was doing with that person? Any follow-up with you, just as a matter of by way of explanation as to why?
No, basically he just started asking me questions about me and
okay.
What I did and why I was there.
Okay. And so you got started in your lesson. I remember yesterday you were talking about how that he kind of inadvertently set you up to in terms of getting started in a maybe not as focused mental way. So your first few notes weren't perhaps as good as you had planned.
No.
But as you went on, things got better.
He asked me what do you have to play, and I said, well, I can play this, I can play this, I can play this. A mixture of excerpts, etudes. And one of them was Charlie A2, and he says, well, let's do Charlie A2, which was, I should have never mentioned that one, because that...
I think that was one of his favorites.
Yeah. So we spent the next probably 25, 30 minutes just working on beginning.
So now you were having a hard time starting notes. You had caught the bug.
Yeah, caught the bug, so to speak. And part of it was, it's starting on the offbeat, not starting on a beat. So.
Right.
And, I could start the note fine, but it sounded like I was coming in on a Bruckner symphony or something.
Okay.
So he was wanting me to come in and talked about the string and the vibrato before the bow is drawn and things like that. And he says, play it like you're joining in.
Mm-hmm.
So we worked on that, and after about 20 minutes, I was playing the whole etude, and he was.
That's pretty.
But yeah, the first 20 minutes was pretty rough.
So in that first lesson, or maybe it was in the second lesson, you were mentioning off camera doing some work on the big trumpet. Was it Rochu or Bordoni or something on the big trumpet? Or?
We did. The second lesson was a lot of piccolo trumpet.
Okay.
And one of the things I wanted to do was work with him on the piccolo trumpet because I was a combination of getting dizzy when I would play it and just not being efficient is what I felt. So we started out and I played, I think I played some Bach and then the real crux of the matter came up when I played with some Smeel and Goldberg. And he stopped me and we started working on it, and he had me play some Concone and use a really wide vibrato. And we probably did that for a good 10 to 15 minutes. And mouthpiece, horn, and then gradually we started taking the vibrato away. But basically, every time I would pick up the piccolo, I would immediately get tight.
Mm-hmm.
So that was how we worked on it, and I worked on my breathing with the piccolo, and it made a big difference. I still use that. Everything he talked about that day, I still use it for my playing and for students.
Okay, so he was working with you on the piccolo trumpet, and he talked about breathing. What was that about?
Well, I was taking a huge breath and then playing, and then I would get dizzy. And he just had me scale back and basically take a normal breath, pick up the horn, and just top it off and play. And topping off was very, wasn't topping off to 100%. And thinking of using the air that I would need for that horn as opposed to what I would use for a big horn.
Okay, so not using necessarily amounts of air you'd use for the big trumpet, but
right.
Still over 50%, so you're in the
yeah.
plus side of your respiration.
And that was one of the things that he worked with me on the big horn was I was going too far into my,
your reserves.
In the reserves. And especially when I was playing etudes or something like that, he said you got to breathe more often.
So you'd be getting too much to the tip of your,
exactly.
If you use the bow analogy.
And it was interesting because years later, I'm watching Gail Williams in a master class, and she's tiny.
Yeah.
She's got this horn in front of her, and looks like somebody gave her too big a horn. She's so tiny, and she's breathing, and you never notice it affecting the phrasing or anything with the music. And I was talking to her afterwards, and she said, "Yeah," she said, "you just have to learn how to do this and not compromise." So, and she talked very exactly what Jake talked about. Not getting into your reserves.
Mm-hmm.
She said your top 60% is usable, and after that you're gasping.
Mm-hmm. So top 2/3 of your breath stay out of the bottom third of your breath.
Exactly.
As much as you can. Yeah, Jacobs talked about that as that last third as being never. You don't want to routinely get into that. That's your reserve in case you get into trouble on stage, in case there's something that happens. It's a different tempo, or maybe you miss a breath or something. You've trained yourself to play in the top 2/3, so that bottom third is there if you need it. Plus, if you're in that bottom third, that's where exponentially the tension just explodes. And so if you're playing routinely on that bottom third, then you're building habits based on unneeded tension.
Right.
What about the you mentioned vibrato on the piccolo trumpet?
Well,
so what was that all about?
that was just to get me to loosen up, to reduce the tension. So, I mean, the vibrato was, you wouldn't want to play that way in public.
No.
And
It's more of a.
and he wanted it to be as wide as I could make it without skipping the other partials. So I was using a lot of vibrato, and he had me do it both with hand and with jaw, and then gradually we take the vibrato away. And I've used that with my students many times. I still use that for myself.
So he was using it therapeutically, I'm guessing, and it was a way to get you to find that really great center of sound.
Yeah.
Is that what?
And I think it was both the center and just to realize that you didn't have to work so hard to play the instrument.
Mm-hmm. Anything? Did he ever do anything with articulations or anything like that come up with it? Do you recall?
No, we did very little with articulation. We did talk a bit about the arch of the tongue,
Mm-hmm.
and he felt I arched my tongue too much. And at the time I was playing the piccolo when we were doing this, he says, "Don't raise your tongue, don't raise your tongue." And we kind of
Agreed to
discussed
disagree?
this. We agreed to disagree. I said, I can't believe that Bud Herseth, when he plays the Brandenburg, isn't arching his tongue. And he says, so he doesn't raise his tongue very much.
Okay.
And I think Bud would probably
It may have disagreed.
admit that he did.
Yeah. And then what about when you got the vibrato going? What did that end up doing for your piccolo playing?
Well, it loosened things up, and I noticed right away that my shoulders went down and my neck wasn't tight, and basically it was working to demonstrate to me without saying this that I could play this instrument without so much tension and energy.
So work less, get better results.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he kept saying lazy is your friend while I'm playing the piccolo. Well, I'm still not sure I believe that, but less work is better.
Less
that's
work.
for sure.
Okay. And what about, did he talk about buzzing the mouthpiece at all?
We did a little bit of buzzing, going back and forth with the vibrato on the mouthpiece. Not a whole lot of that on the piccolo because I couldn't get a very good buzz on the piccolo mouthpiece.
Mm-hmm.
But,
and what about conceptually speaking? Anything? Play it like Bud. Think, how would Bud play this? That kind of stuff at all, or just strictly in the moment?
He said that. He said that when we were working on the large horn. He didn't say that with the piccolo.
Okay.
And I think mostly when he was talking about piccolo, he talked about play like a singer. He mentioned that.
Because he had you playing he had you playing simple tunes on the piccolo.
Yeah,
right?
I was playing Concone.
Right.
And he'd say, why don't you play that Concone, and says, put it in a transposition that's good for the piccolo. So that's what I would do. And starting out with lots of vibrato and then gradually taking it away.
So maybe you came in playing something that was a standard piccolo rep that was, probably pretty challenging, and he lessened the challenge with the Concone?
I think
Is that basically
when I first came in, I played some Bach. I don't remember Magnificat or something like that. And then the Shmuel Goldenberg, and that's where he had me stop and start playing the Concone.
Okay.
And really simplify things, just dial it back.
So he lessened the challenge, brought it back to the middle to work on getting things to be stabilized, and then from there you could transfer what you developed here in the middle to the
and he talked about the efficiency of playing it, if I was going to be efficient, I was going to have to go to simpler things and use those as the way to move out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's I still, everything he said about the piccolo I still use today, and I use with my students.
Now, I remember playing with you in Brevard for those 12 summers and just noticing that you took a pretty big breath, a trumpeter, and you put out some really great sound. Is that something that you learned in Boston, or is that something that you got from your lessons with Jacobs?
Well, I think in Boston, I thought more about breathing to whatever phrase you're going to have to play.
Okay.
And one of the things that he said, and I noticed listening to some of the tapes of his master classes, was, yes, you can breathe to the phrase, and I know Bud talked about that too, breathe for the phrase you're going to have to play. But he also said, you're better off taking more air than you're going to need.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because the first time I thought of that, on a job, the conductor slowed down a lot more and held the note out a lot longer, and I was glad I took that bigger breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
So.
Yeah, he would say there's, I don't remember the exact, I'm sure it's been documented in one of Brian's book or Nelson's book. There's a part of the brain, the biocomputer level of the brain, I think Jacobs would call it, that takes care of the excess air. But
and I think the other thing that I remember I played Parsifal for him, and his whole thing about taking the really long, slow breath,
mm-hmm.
relaxed, like yawning, that really was effective too. And
So
I
like
use that with my students. Yeah.
Like kind of
If you've got the time, why not take more time to breathe?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You breathe in the style of the music.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
But he also was very careful to point out to me that when I was getting ready to play something high, I was going, this kind of thing, and he
kept at the lips.
Yeah. He had me put my horn up, and he says, put your horn up and just breathe around the mouthpiece. So, yeah, and that was very helpful.
And the tension that you were experiencing, was that, where was that tension that you were?
I think it's all in here.
Okay.
And I would get very tight in the neck.
Okay. So that, just working with him, especially on the piccolo vibrato, that really helped to alleviate that. Now, Mark, I remember years ago when we were at Brevard, you were telling me about this special mode of transportation that Mr. Jacobs engaged with you following one of these lessons. Can you regale us with that story?
Sure. We were in the lesson, and I just played something to put my horn down, and he looked at his watch, and he goes, he says, I have an interview at some radio station in like 5 minutes or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was a very short amount of time, and it was not nearby. He was going to take a cab there, and it was rush hour. And it was serious rush hour in Chicago. And, I didn't think anything about it. I had come on a motorcycle. So I mentioned, well, I have a motorcycle. I could probably get you there faster than the car could. He goes, oh no, I'm not getting on a motorcycle. So I continued to pack up, and he got on the phone. I don't know if he ever reached anybody, but I heard the phone hang up, and he says, you really think you could get me there on the motorcycle? And I said, well, if you know the way there, we can probably take some back ways and we'll avoid the traffic. We can go through alleys and things like that. He said, and he goes, okay. He says, where are you parked? And I was right outside the building. I was parked illegally. So we went and got on the motorcycle, and I actually had a helmet for him. He barely got the helmet on. It was too small for him. And we got on the back, he got on the back of the motorcycle, and I said, just hang on to my belt. And when I lean, don't resist, don't lean the other way. So he had something over his shoulder, like a bag or something, and we got on, and when we first started off, I had to go off the sidewalk into the street, and it was like, I thought he was gonna tear my pants off. It was really gripping hard. And I said, just relax, you know. And we got out in the traffic, and we're riding along, and he goes, you know, I was having to get the directions from him. He says, turn right here or whatever, you know, so we turned right. After about a block and a half, I hear this shaking in the back, and I think he says, this is actually fun. And he was giggling.
No
I mean, he was
kidding.
laughing.
Oh, that's so fun.
So we got there, and he got to his radio interview. I don't know if he was in time or not, but he got off the bike and handed me the helmet, shook my hand, and went and did his interview.
Well, how about that?
But he was starting to go in the door, and he turned around. He says, don't tell anybody about this. So here I am telling you.
Well, yeah, okay. And we're glad you did. Pebbles is very happy to hear that story, and he'd like to, as a way of saying thank you for all of your information, but especially the motorcycle story. Don't get any ideas. Present you with this genuine Tuba People TV water bottle.
Thank you very much.
And I know that you remain an avid runner, and so you drink lots of water.
Yeah.
So there you go. And now back to you.